Good evening, everyone. I'm Rakhi Gautam from greytHR, the moderator for this Parichay webinar session today. Thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us on this 91st episode of the Parichay webinar series by greytHR. Now, today we are addressing a topic that's not only critical from a compliance perspective, but also essential to building safe, inclusive, and respectful workplaces. The topic for today is, as you know, prevention of sexual harassment at work, ensuring compliance and a safe workplace. Now, before we dive into the topic, let's do a little housekeeping on how the session goes. So the session is divided in two parts. The first part will be the discussion with our expert, which will then be followed by an audience Q&A. So audience Q&A is where time is all yours. You can start putting across your questions from this panel, which is available on your screen Q&A panel. You can put your questions there and we will take them up towards the end. Also, I'm sure a lot of those questions that you might have would already be covered in the first part of the discussion. But if you still have any more questions, you can put that in the Q&A option, which is there, and we will take them up towards the end. Also, this session is currently being recorded, so you can always come back and watch it later on our official greytHR YouTube channel under the playlist Parichay. Also, we will be sharing a mailer with you, which will have this recording session as well as our experts' email ID. So if you want to reach out to her directly, if you have any questions or if you want to have more discussion, you would be able to reach out to her. It should come to you maybe probably by next week. So you can then, have those conversations later as well. Now, I think we have the quorum with us. A lot of you have joined us today, and we are very excited to see and to share all these insights that will help you build safer workplaces. Now, workplace safety goes beyond physical well-being. It includes emotional and psychological safety, especially for women and marginalized communities. The Prevention of Sexual Harassment Posh Act was landmark step into that direction, of course, but are we truly compliant or are we just ticking a box? So our discussion today would be covering 4 key areas that will help us understand where we are today, what needs to be done more, and how at the end of the day we can create a workplace which is just not physically but psychologically, emotionally safe for our diverse workforces. So what we will be discovering today would be understanding the Posh Act and its legal framework, recognizing and preventing workplace harassment, role of employers and the internal complaints committee, building a culture of awareness and sensitization, and ensuring compliance and avoiding any legal consequences. Now, to help us navigate all of that and to share her insights with us today, we are thrilled to have with us CA Ruchika Bhagat, Managing Director at Brooks Consulting Private Limited. A lot of you who are regular, webinar attendees, they would know Ruchika very well. She's been a part of our various sessions in the past. To all those who have joined us for the very first time today, let me quickly take you all through her profile. CA Ruchika graduated from the University of Delhi in 1996 and became a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in 1998. She's a strategic advisor in setting up businesses in India for foreign companies and taking care of its compliances. She specializes in business advisory, tax, regulatory, and risk advisory. She's also a business professional with more than 24 years of rich experience, helping other businesses grow and be more profitable. She has a strong and genuine passion for business growth and sustainability and has a vast knowledge of working with Indian companies as well as many foreign companies. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ruchika. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Rakhi. As I always say, it's very nice to be here. Very informative session as always, and I love to be part of this.
Great. Then, before we get into the actual discussion, I want to quickly launch a poll for our audience to understand their perspective and where they stand in terms of their understanding of the Posh Act 2030. Let me quickly launch the poll for all of you. Okay, I've launched the poll. Now, this is not a right or a wrong question. This is just to understand your perspective. And I would urge each one of you to participate in this because this will help us tailor the session, in the direction which is more suited for you and which will help you unpack and discover more insights on this topic. How confident are you about your organization's current POSH compliance status? Fully compliant, mostly compliant, but needs improvement? Not sure, we are still working on it. I see 50% of you have already participated. The rest of you, please participate, and this would only help us, make the session more engaging. Another 10 seconds, and then we'll see the result. Okay, let me end the poll now and share the result with all of you as well. Okay, so 32% and 32% both say is fully compliant and mostly compliant but needs improvement. 27% of you say that you are still working on it, and 9% says not sure. Understood. Thank you for participating in this poll. Now to you, Ruchika, to start off with, of course, we want to understand the overview of the Posh Act 2013 and why it was introduced in the first place.
Basically, the main purpose of POSH was to guarantee a secure and a respectable workplace for the women, especially with regard to the sexual harassments of the women at the workplace. So initially in 1992, there was a Bhamri Devi case that led to the realization actually to the government that there is a lot of scope is left for the legal improvement, and there's a lot of absence in the workplace safety for the women. And then again in 1997, Supreme Court has come up in this Vishakha case where they actually recognized that there should be legally steps taken towards sexual harassment in the workplace. So in that judgment, exactly, the outcome was for the formation of this Prevention of Sexual Harassment POSH Act, which formalized ultimately the legal protections for the women in the workplace. If you say POSH, so it not only constitutes the sexual harassment, if I say, but it also mandates that you should have an internal committee in the workspace wherever you have 10 or more employees. So when I'm saying it is regard to the sexual harassment, it is not with regard only and only to the woman, but if in case you have all the male employees in the office, still it is applicable on your organization. So basically, it is towards zero tolerance towards the harassment.
Thank you for that, Ruchika. And summing that up for us, it gives us a good insight as to why it was introduced and what led to that, decision. Now, you also touched upon it. When we say sexual harassment, it is not just restricted to that, right? At the end of the day, we are talking about creating a workplace which is psychologically safe, which is inclusive. So, what exactly qualifies as sexual harassment under the POSH Act? And are there any common misconceptions that we should be aware of?
So look, there is lot of misconception with regard to harassment. So when I say the word sexual harassment, so there's lot of interpretation with regard to that. In fact, let us understand the terminology, what is exactly it is. So if any unwanted activity is there that is in sexual in nature, that is whether it is overt or covert, any sort of thing, that is considered as part of sexual harassment. As I said, there's a lot of misconception when I talk about this term. So being taking this in a broader term, it has a different forms, it has a different terminology, if you say. So different interpretations are there. That is where there are a lot of more misconceptions are attached to this. For example, if I say it has to be physical, so many believes that sexual harassment involves only physical contacts, whereas it is not so. So even if it is a verbal comment, there's a jokes, hints, or suggestive test, anything like that, even that is a part of sexual harassment. Similarly, many of us, we feel that the intent, it matters more than the impact. That is, if someone didn't mean to be offended, that is not a harassment. But exactly that is not the case. Whatever matter is how the person is receiving or feeling at the end, that is more important. So this all is part of sexual harassment. In fact, many of the people, they feel that it is only applicable to the woman, as I said in the beginning. So it is not only for the woman, even if it is you have a domestic help, you are student, you are healthcare professionals, even at salons or ice cream parlors also. So whenever you have more than 10 employees, even if, as I said, you have all the male employees, it is applicable to you. So a lot more misconceptions are attached to it. Even some of the people, they feel only men can be accused. Exactly, that is not the case. So it is not only to protect the woman, but the reality is that laws do specifically provides protection for the woman, but any other person, it can be a man, it can be a woman, it can be any other gender, they are also covered under this.
Thank you, Ruchika, for that. Because, as you rightly mentioned, it's not about the impact, more about the intent. So maybe it's something that, somebody just says that, okay, I did not mean it that way, but you did. And in that particular moment, that person felt that way. So it's important that we recognize that and we ensure that we don't overstep, we don't say things which are not right to say, and we respect everybody at the end of the day. And in terms of, you also touched upon how it's not just physical sexual harassment, it's also oral, it's also actions, it's also signs that people might do. So all of this constitutes of sexual harassment under the Posh Act. Thank you for highlighting that. Now coming to my next question, which is more to understand, are there any patterns that we can look for in order to prevent it, right? Because of course something happens and then you go and try to work on it and try to provide justice. But why do we have to come to that? Why don't we identify it early on? Why don't we prevent it? Because it is prevention of sexual harassment. So what are some early signs or patterns organizations should look for to proactively address harassment issues?
I think, Raki, this is very good question, and all of us, we should be aware of this. What are the signs from where we can make it that this is the case of sexual harassment? And all of us should be aware of these signs, and we should take proactive approach in this if you see such signs in your organization. So first point is always to identify the harassment early. That is very crucial for maintaining a safe and respectful workspace. So when I talk about these signs, so first of all, as I said, it is not only about physical contact. So if in case you are anybody in your organization, they are making any inappropriate jokes or they are commenting, so that is also a part of sexual harassment. Again, as I said, the intent that matters. So exclusion and isolation, if you see that any employee is constantly is being excluded from the team activity, he or she is not taking participation, is not participating in any social event, especially without any valid reasons. Or if you see you are regularly you are getting any leaves from an employee and there is no valid reasons for them. In that case, it can be a form of sexual harassment, or it may be because of the toxic environment in the organization. Similarly, if you see any welcome physical contact is there, that is frequently any unwanted physical contact is there, like it can be through touching, it can be through patting on your back or leaning, anything like that. If you see, that is also part of this. Apart from this, if you see any pattern of favorism or any unequal treatment, that is you feel that there is gender bias is there in your organization, even that is part of this sexual harassment. So all these things, they are part and parcel of the sexual harassment. Whenever you feel, in fact, as I said, that if in case there is a high turnover or absenteeism in your organization and there is no valid reason behind that, so it may be because of that. Similarly, if you find any disrespectful behavior is there which is making any other person uncomfortable. So all these are basic signs of the sexual harassment. You can find out if you see any change in behavior or performance of any particular employee without any reason. That is, once he was such a high performing, and ultimately you find this that he or she is not performing well. So all this is part and parcel of sexual harassment.
Thank you for highlighting that, Ruchika. And honestly, when we talk about identifying patterns or signs, we focus more on the actions of the person who has done it. So we might say, okay, inappropriate jokes, unwanted touches, pat on the back, cleaning, and making all those comments which are not required. So we understand that this is definitely a pattern. But you very rightly also mentioned and talked about the victims, because sometimes we often overlook that, right? Because we are trying to focus on the problem, but we don't see the person who's suffered through it. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because honestly, when I thought about early signs and patterns, I thought of these actions, the person who's doing it, but the person who's getting suffered through it, who's suffering through it, we don't generally talk about all that much. We might think, okay, they're taking leaves because they might be feeling low because of some other reason, or they might be sick, they might have some family issues, or if somebody is underperforming and they were such high achievers at one point of time, we don't really think of this as the first or the second option in that case. So this helps.
Exactly.
Thank you so much
If
for
HR can
highlighting.
sense that any person is taking extraordinary leaves or is taking leaves without any reason, I think it can be alarming sign. So we need to check that.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Ruchika. Now, coming to the role of employers and the internal complaints committee, ICC, that we often, hear and read and talk about when we discuss Posh. So before that, I just want to also understand from our audience as to what's the biggest challenge that their organization might be facing in implementing Posh effectively. So before we move on to the next question, I'm just going to launch this poll, and I would urge everybody again to participate on this and um, let us know on this one. Okay, just a moment. Okay, I think the other poll is already on. Is it? Okay, stop sharing. Right. Launch. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge your organization faces in implementing Posh effectively? Is it lack of awareness among employees, inactive or undertrained ICC, resistance from the leadership team, infrequent or ineffective training, or not applicable? Again, we have some 600 of you with us today. So I would urge each one of you to participate in this. These questions also help you think, you also then start thinking, okay, if this is something which is happening. So I would urge each one of you to participate. I'll keep the poll for another 10 seconds since we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience also, and we want to also, cover the questions from our end. So another 5 seconds and I'll end the poll. Okay. I will share the result with all of you. So 42% of you say that it's lack of awareness among employees. Then 24% is not applicable, 13% infrequent or ineffective training, 12% inactive or undertrained ICC, and 9% resistance from leadership. So thank you again for participating in this poll. Now I'm coming back to you, Ruchika, with the question, which is, when of course, we discussed about what constitutes of sexual harassment, why it was introduced, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act 2013, why it was introduced in the first place, the importance of creating safer and inclusive workplaces. Now, of course, when we talk about workplace, of course, there's a lot of responsibility on the employer, the organization, right? So what are the mandatory responsibilities of an employer under Posh Act? Ruchika, you're on mute.
Well, Raki, I think employers are legally required to take a specific measures to safeguard and to make a respectful environment, that is workplace for the women. So there are specific measures that they are required to take. First of all, they have to make internal committee, that is ICC. So in order to address any sexual harassment in the organization, each and every employer, as I said, if you have more than 10 employees, or voluntarily if 10 employees, less than 10 employees, then also. So mandatory it is when, as in when you have more than 10 employees. So as in when you have more than 10 employees, I think it is mandatory to have your IC committee, that is internal committee for the safe workplace for the women. So in this internal committee, there is one external member with the experience of working with women empowerment, and he or she also has a knowledge with regard to the legal compliances And there must be senior female employees who can serve as a presiding officer in this case. Similarly, you should also have a POSH policy in your company. So in this POSH policy, there should be all the rules and regulations, training programs, handbooks, instructions, and indications should be there with regard to the POSH compliance. Similarly, each and every workplace should have a prominent notices at the workplace so that they should at least give the information regarding the POSH compliances to the employees. Similarly, as I said, that there should be a safe work environment. So whenever I say there should have safe work environment, so employers should always, in fact, or HR should always keep an eye at the work culture. That is, they should always take a proactive approach whenever they find any such harassment is being taken or is taking place in their organization. Employer are also required to give ICC resource that it needs a prompt and impartial investigation should be there if in case any such activity happens in their organization. So basically, these are something that the employer, these steps need to be taken care by the employer. And apart from this, one more thing that is very important is confidentiality. So the employer is responsible for making and maintaining the privacy of the complaint. That is very important. That is, they should always hide the identity of the complainant in this case, whenever any such things happen. And whenever if ICC finds any such thing, then proper and effective measures should be taken. Like suspension can be there, termination can be there. If in case these things are not happened, ICC, if you are not implementing POSH policy, if you are not having ICC intact, then in fact, government also enforces penalties and prosecutions. If the organization was supposed to have POSH policies, but they are not implementing the POSH policies in their organization.
Understood. Thank you for that, Ruchika. And, summarizing what is the role of employer here, of course, a lot of responsibilities on their shoulders that they need to, hone and be compliant with. And I think one thing that you highlighted was keeping it confidential, which is very, very important because it is not only from the view of the person who's filed the complaint, but also from the view of person who's being, mentioned in the complaint. So it's very important that we keep the privacy and confidentiality intact. Thank you for that. Now, you did talk about ICC, the Internal Complaints Committee. Now, many companies do set up an internal committee, but just for compliance, right? What makes an ICC truly effective and empowered in practice? What do you think? What they need to be, doing in order to not just take complaints, go through complaints and do the procedure, but also at the end of the day make them feel, make the organization, the people in it, make them feel empowered that there's a body which is there and they can trust.
So look, whenever you have an external member, which is also mandatory part of ICC, so external member, that is the person who is outside the organization. So he or she always makes sure that the sexual harassment complaint processes has been fair, they are not biased. So their experience and their neutral view brings it more unbiased, if you see. So I think the external member requirement, that is something must, which each and every organization should follow in this case.
Thank you for that, Ruchika. Now, if you could also walk us through the step-by-step procedure that the ICC must follow once a complaint is filed. What is it that they need to go and
So look,
do through?
ICC committee should be more structured and there should be a time-bound process whenever they get any complaint like this. So when I say step-by-step procedure, so regarding step-by-step procedure, first of all, in case as and when they get any complaint, so the aggrieved woman, whosoever is filing any complaint, so within 3 months, ICC should, from the date of incidents, resolve this complaint. If in case the woman is unable to file any complaint, then ICC can assist her, can encourage her to file the complaint. There may be some exceptional cases that a complainant, she is not able to, or she is taking time to file the complaint. Then this time limit of 3 months, it can be extended. So first and foremost procedure is regarding the receipt of complaint. Once this complaint has been received by ICC, then their next step is, then they have to see within which jurisdiction it falls. So if ICC think that it is not acceptable, they may reject the complaint if they think there is a proper reason behind it, or the complaint was biased. Even that can happen at times, that whenever you get the complaint, it is not that complaint is always genuine. So looking at the complaint, looking behind the reasons for complaints, the ICC then has to entertain the complaint. Then another next step that ICC can be taken is that there should no monetary settlement whenever they, if any the other party asks for any settlement, that settlement should not be there. Each and every hearing, it should be recorded properly, and then only the matter should be closed. This should be the foremost requirement. And then whenever, if you are getting any complaint, then copy of complaint should be shared to the other party, that is with, it should be shared with the respondent. Then we should give him time, at least 10 days time should be given to him, and to so that he can prepare the relevant documents, he can prepare with the relevant witnesses, if in case any, that is, he should be answerable for whatever charges have been levied against him. So after all these, after hearing all both the parties, then within 10 days, ICC has to complain this query, and then action has to be taken. When I say action can be taken, then action can be either, it can be a written apology depending upon the case, it can be a warning, it can be a suspension or termination, it can be deduction of salary also. So depending on this, we have to decide what actually should be the remedy for the complaint. As I said, it may so happen that at times the complaint is false. So ICC has to check whether this complaint is false or it is a genuine complaint. And if it is a genuine complaint, then only they have to pursue for it. And last but not least, as I always say, that confidentiality should be maintained. Whosoever is the complainant, her name and her details should not be disclosed anywhere to the organization.
Thank you for that, Ruchika, and thank you for elaborating on all the points which are necessary. Now we talked about the need of the Posh Act, why it was introduced, who gets covered under it, what is the role of the employer, and what is the role of the ICC. Now it's also very important that while we do everything to be compliant, it's also important to build a culture of awareness and sensitization, which is not restricted to just being compliant, but creating a naturally inclusive and safer workplaces for everybody to come and work. So how important it is in your perspective, and if you can shed more light on this, is training and awareness in preventing workplace harassment, and what are some of the best practices for sensitization programs?
Look, training and awareness is very important for an organization so that it can be stopped at the initial level. Maybe it never starts in the organization if any training is there and awareness is spread between the employees, so they should know what exactly is right or what exactly is wrong. So whenever employee knows that what is the harassment and how does it look like and how you have to speak up, I think it can stop before it gets worse. So like some of the examples, as I always say, that we should tell them a real life examples, that what is exactly harassment and what is not the harassment. Interactive session should be there. Similarly, online training should be there, online learning should be there, so that employees should come to know regarding the work culture of the organization. Then we should encourage each and every employee that they should speak up if at all they find that the space is not safe for working for them. Leadership can be there. Sensitization is very effective, as I always say. So whenever top management gives example, whenever top management steps into it and they encourage the people that you should speak up, I think that is the most important part. Similarly, we should always check what language the other person is using. So that language the other person is using is very important. So all these things, I think all this training and awareness program, if we launch in our organization, that is very important, and it can prevent any workplace harassments.
Definitely, Ruchika. Thank you for that. Now, in your experience, what's the biggest challenge in getting employees to take Posh seriously? And how can organizations, overcome that, of course?
Well, I think lot of ignorance is there, lot of misunderstanding is there, since you have yourself conducted this poll right now and you have come to know only 40% are aware of this POSH compliances. So many of the organizations, they are not at all aware of that something, some POSH policy is there. So we have to make them aware that this policy is there. If you have more than 10 employees, you should have this policy intact in your organization. You should maintain a safe environment for the organization. So that is, I think, a lacuna, or you can say lack of knowledge that the people are having, employers are having. So I think through HRs, the employer, they should come to know that this policy is there so that they can ensure a proper safe working space for all the employees.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Ruchika. Now, we also want to talk about, and a lot of employers, HR professionals have joined us today. So, we also want to talk about how we can ensure compliance and avoid any legal consequences. Now, you did touch upon this, briefly in your previous responses, but to talk about it in detail, what are the potential penalties or legal consequences for companies that fail to comply with the Posh Act?
If in case the company is not complying with the POSH compliances, though it was mandatory for them to comply with, so there are monetary fines also, there's penalty prosecutions also, there are civil and criminal liabilities are also. So when I'm talking about the monetary fines, so company can be fined up to rupees 50,000 if in case they do not constitute any internal complaint committee. Similarly, the same fine can be imposed if they do not provide any training and they do not conduct any time, sorry, they do not conduct any timely inquiries against any complaint that they have received. Or at the end of the year, there is always a requirement of annual filing of annual report to the district officer. So if in case the company has not filed any annual report to the district officer, again it is complied with the monetary fines. Then non-implementation of recommendation by ICC, that is also very important. If in case company is not complying with the recommendations that ICC has made, again it is complied with this monetary fines. Similarly, if in case there are repeated violations in the company, then in that case company can also be punished with penalties and prosecutions. Or if in case government finds that company is facing a, there can be a cancellation also for the registration if there are repeated violations in the company. As I said, there is a civil and criminal liability also. So depending upon the nature of the case, depending upon the individuals and companies, the company may face the civil suit or criminal proceedings when there is a gross negligence or harassment, any harassment case that has been mishandled by the company. In fact, there can be also a complainant can also file a case legally against the employer in high court, or they can file FIR also against the company. And not only this, this is one part that they are facing any penalty prosecutions or monetary penalties. But apart from this, there is also a negative publicity, if you see, in the work culture environment of the organization, if any such thing happens. So I think better to prevent such things, better to implement POSH compliances, better to have ICC training in the employees, and better to have knowledge of this and spread knowledge regarding this.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Ruchika. Now, did you did talk about the annual report that we submit to the district officer. So, first question, is an annual report submission to the district officer mandatory? And second, what should organizations include in this report?
So yes, if you're POSH compliant, then you have to file this annual report to the district officer. It is very much mandatory as per Section 21 of POSH Act. So when I say what exactly this report contains, so it includes the number of complaints that has been received during the year, how these complaints have been disposed of, how many complaints have been disposed of, how many cases are pending for more than 90 days, then what nature of action that employer has taken, while handling these complaints. So whether sensitization program has been conducted in the company or not. So basically annual report consists of all these things. So annual report is also essential, if you see, to ensure a transparency, and it allows authority to track down how well the company is in implementing the POSH policy and how well the company is regarding handling the cases. So in fact, it also holds the company accountable for creating a harassment-free work environment, if you see. So these are basically annual report always depicts the complaints that has been received and how they have been handled by the company. So all these details are filed in this annual report.
Understood. Thank you for that, Ruchika. And I'm sure this was very helpful for our audience here today. Now, coming to my final question, which is um, the evolving landscape, right? Now, previously, of course, we would only work from office. It was like maybe, say 0.02% companies that would offer. I'm just like hypothetically saying very, very less companies would offer hybrid or virtual, workplace. Now that we see that a lot of people are and organizations are adapting to hybrid models, people are working from home, people are working from co-working spaces, people are working, they're sometimes coming to office, sometimes they're virtually joining. So in these cases, how should companies adapt their posh policies for remote or virtual workplaces?
Yes, exactly. So I want to convey this, if in case all of your employees, even if all your employees, they are working from home or they are working from remote places, then also you have to be a POSH compliant, provided you have more than 10 employees. So can, first of all, the question arises, can there any case of harassment arise if all of us are working remotely? So answer is yes, it can arise. So if, even if all the employees are working remotely or you have hybrid environment, then also you need to be more POSH compliant. When I say even if you're working remotely, then also you have to be POSH compliant. Then how can the cases be, how can cases be there for sexual harassment? Well, it can be. It can be through video calls, it can be through emails, it can be through chats, even it can be through social media also. So we have to update through POSH policies to all our employees that no such thing should occur, even if you are working remotely. Similarly, as I said, that virtual ICC accessibilities can be there. So we can handle the complaints online. We can make the trainings online. We can spread this awareness of POSH through virtual space also to the employees. So as and when more digitalization is taking place, so I think there are a lot of methods are there through which we can give this training to the employees virtually.
Thank you for that, Ruchika. And this, takes me back to the first question where we discussed about what constitutes a sexual harassment. And you mentioned that it's not just physical; it could be oral, it could be, through actions, it could be a comment that you pass, and that doesn't need to be done in a physical one-to-one, right? It could be done virtually. It could be done, as you said, through emails, meetings, video calls, social media. So, of course, it's very important that we also realize this, even if we are working remotely or we have a hybrid model in our organizations, we need to be compliant with the POSH Act. So once again, thank you so much, Ruchika, for such an insightful discussion. We have uncovered, the legal, procedural, and cultural dimensions of POSH at work, from the importance of a well-trained ICC to the role of sensitization in preventing harassment at the workplace. Thank you for all the insights that you shared. This was all from my end. But I do see a lot of questions already lined up in our audience Q&A. So we'll take them up one by one. I do see some questions are answered, so we'll not take those questions. But those which are not answered, we'll quickly, go through that. So the first question is from Bhavitra. Does the Indian government have any specific portal for POSH trainers to register themselves or acknowledge trainers?
Hello, Raki, I'm sorry, there's connectivity issue.
No
So you have to
problem.
repeat your question.
No problem. Yeah, okay. So, does the Indian government have any specific portal for posh trainers to register themselves or acknowledge trainers? This is from Bhavitra.
Look, you have to take certification from NGO to be a posh trainer. So as such, there is no specific portal from where you can get this.
Okay, understood. Next question is from Hemavati. How to get registered with Posh Act?
Okay, so in case if you want to get registered with Posh Act, so you need to talk to some good Posh trainer so that Posh can be implemented in your organization. This trainer will organize ICC committee. Then you will have external member. As I said, I have already discussed the procedures so which you have to go through. If in case any complaint is there, even though Posh has not been implemented in your organization, but you faces any complaint, at that moment also you can talk to a posh trainer. They can come into the picture. They can form the policies regarding the posh in your organization, and then they can handle this case.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to the next question. Since we have a lot of questions, I'm just going to do this like a rapid fire round. This question is from Asha. Just having a policy document is enough for the compliance for an organization, or there should be awareness about this policy? And if there is, then how many sessions or what should be the frequency of it? So, of course, we have covered the importance of awareness, but if you could just maybe elaborate a bit on this.
Look, one thing you have to understand: posh is not something that is documentary. That is on limited, just restricted to the documents only. It is something that is awareness that you need to bring within your organization. This is awareness. This is to create a healthy environment in your organization. So if you, in case you want to create a healthy environment in your organization, I think it should not be restricted to the documents.
Thank you for that, Ruchika. The other question is, how important is POSH in case of remote work culture? We have already just discussed that.
This is
So,
very important. I keep on telling because I myself have seen so many cases where the complaints are filed even if all the employees are working remotely. So it can be, as I've been telling you, it can be through mails, it can be through gestures, it can be through Zoom call, like we are taking this call. Still, some incidents can happen.
definitely, definitely. Now, I think there's a lot of confusion in the question and maybe how we discussed the first part of the discussion today, which was who all comes under the prevention of sexual harassment. So, of course, you did mention that it is specifically designed for women, but companies can make it gender neutral. So, if you can just, touch upon that a little more.
Exactly. So initially, when the POSH was implemented, it was for women only. But nowadays, it is for all. As I said, it is for male. So it is not biased, gender biased. But this thing we need to understand. This is not gender biased.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Now, coming to the next question, which is a 32-year-old female HR eligible to become the presiding officer for the ICC?
Age is no bar.
Okay. Understood. Now, this is another question. I think this is some of the instance that we can talk about when it comes to, what can be considered as a sexual harassment. So what if an incident occurred outside of regular working hours, but is related to work? Does this come under sexual harassment?
Even if, yes, it do covers, as I always say, intent matters.
Okay,
It do
understood.
cover. Even if it is outside the working hours, even if it is outside the organization, but still it matters. Yes, it will be covered.
Understood. Understood. Next question is, so this is from an anonymous attendee. There are two questions here. The first question is, regarding POSH policy, the employer should mention the laws applicable for men and LGBTQ plus community. So should the employer mention the law is applicable for men and LGBTQ plus community as well?
As such, it is never mentioned that specifically it is for women or it is specifically for men. It is basically for all the employees who are part and parcel of the organization.
Understood. Second question is, will abusive language, which result in mental instability or other issues with the person facing such language from seniors or managers, falls under POSH?
Well, it do falls under POSH, but again, as I have been telling, that intent matter. When we say Posh, it is something related to sexual harassment. So if it is there through words, then yes, it is covered.
Okay. Next question is from Ludimir Burnell. She has, I think we've already covered this, but yes, you can answer this. Can a company have a gender neutral Posh policy?
Yes, we can have this.
Next question is from Rajesh Khanna. ICC committee should include senior women within the organization. However, do we need to have an external member as a mandate? If yes, what's the guideline for having the external member as part of ICC?
So many Posh trainers are there. You can have external members. Many Posh trainers are there. As I said, you need to have internal members also in this committee and one external member also.
Okay, understood. The next question is from Kashish Pal. How can we stop employees to discuss it with each other in regards to keep it confidential?
Look, confidentiality this is something that you cannot enforce among the employees. First of all, this is something you have to tell them, you have to spread this awareness to the employees that confidentiality should be maintained.
Right. This is more of, something that you can tell people and something that they should do naturally since it's
Exactly. This is
confidential.
general awareness that you can spread to the people, but you cannot stop the people. But yes, you can spread. So this is sort of environment. The way you keep the environment, you make the environment in your organization.
Right. Very, very valid, Ruchika. Thank you for that. Next question is from Meera R. Should we ask the member of the ICC as well as whoever is part of the investigation to sign a NDA to maintain confidentiality?
Even if you don't ask them to sign NDA, because I think I have never seen any such NDA, but they are at such a responsible position, they never disclose this.
Right.
So they always maintain the confidentiality.
Understood. Next question is from Shobha. If the ICC rejects the complaint, then what is the next step the victim can take? Is the ICC decision final on the credibility of the complaint, or can they take it up further with the management?
Well, look, normally what happens in the practical scenario, ICC always look into the depth of the matter. What is the matter? They always hear both the parties and then they make the decision.
Understood. Next question is from Leena. How can small organizations create ICC with just one very junior female alone? All the other staff are male.
Even so, that junior female can be part of this committee in that case.
Now, next question. I think most of the questions that I am seeing right now are covered. We did talk about, so this question is from Jabin, but since it's a procedural question, I'll still take it up. But we have already covered this, but if you would want to, elaborate. What is the step-by-step procedure to register an internal committee under the Posh Act in an organization? And what are the necessary documents required for the registration process?
So I think I have discussed this procedure in the previous question that you have to maintain, first of all, as I said, that you have to maintain this Posh policy as and when any complaint arises, then this Posh policy, take a note of it, then they work on it, they hear both the parties, and then they make a decision. And apart from this, they also give a training and spread the knowledge about the sexual harassment, how it can be and what it can be.
The other question is from anonymous attendee, but this is a very, I think, important scenario that we can discuss, which is what if the person who is very senior involved in Posh panel and the employee has to complain about that person only? What can be done in that situation?
Even if that person is part of top management, even that person is part of management, still you can file a complaint if it is a genuine complaint to ICC.
Okay, understood. Next question is from Karthik. Organizations.
The main intent of forming ICC is to protect you from sexual harassment, irrespective of whether it is coming from the top management, irrespective of whether it is coming from the bottom employee or any parallel employee, anyone.
Right. Now the next question is from Karthik. Organizations which has less than 10 employees, What if someone come across unwelcome situations where they need to go to file a case in that case?
Well, apart from like if in case your organization is having less than 10 employees, still any such case occurs in your organization, there are always other ways also through which you can go. You can file FIR. You can go to the court also. There are so many other different ways so which you can handle this case.
Next question is, as a company, we are more than 10 employees and we don't have any women employees. How do we select proceeding officer in that case? Considering that we say that, Posh is neutral for all.
So in that case, obviously one external member, she will be a female member. Rest has to be from the employees only.
Understood. Okay, I think the rest of the questions we have covered. A lot of questions on, external member. If we have less than 10 employees, annual report filing, all that we have covered. I'll just maybe come towards the end if there's any question there. Okay. Okay, yes, this question, maybe we can take it up. Is it mandatory to change the committee members every 3 years? And what if there are no enough members in the company to take the role? Do we need to pass a board resolution for the reinstating the same committee?
I think 3 years is quite a long time. It may so happen that employee changes. One thing, if no employee has been changed, then same members can be appointed.
Okay. Next question is from I Lakeup Farm. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name correct. But if a person is sexually harassed by an employee from an organization who does not have a POSH policy, will the victim get any justice in this case, or will POSH be applicable?
This we have already discussed. In case if a company is not POSH compliant, then in case or you have more less than 10 employees, then you have lot more options also. You can approach courts, you can go file FIR also.
Okay, understood. Now, there's one question from Paramaspheri. Roadmap or sources where we can take training to become POSH trainer, if there are any that you would like to suggest. Or where they can take it up, where they can go through these sessions or trainings to become one.
I think there are certain institutes which are providing such POSH trainings to become a POSH trainer. But you have to Google it, but you will find some.
Sure. The next question, it's a situational question, which is from Shalja Tiwari. If an employee of an organization misbehaves with a person outside the organization, such as a client during an official client visit, or for example, by asking for personal favors, photos, or contacting them beyond the scope of work, does the Posh Act still apply to such misconduct?
Look, POSH is applicable within the organization to the employer and employees, but it is not applicable on the clients.
Okay. I think we have covered most of the question, but there's one question which is from Praveen Nandi. If the complaint has already been filed to the police and put FIR, then how ICC members must react?
It has already been filed, so even then the ICC member can take up that case. They can hear that case, they can give decision on that case.
Understood. Next question is from Arshi Begum. Can a company secretary take POSH training in an organization?
Yes, they can take. Anybody from the organization, irrespective of what your professional qualification is, you can take.
Understood. Thank you for that, Ruchika. I think most of the questions we have covered. Maybe just one last question we'll take. This is from Ayushi Rastogi. We have submitted the annual report and all MOMs as per compliance, but still receiving the mails from District Court Haryana to send the report as per compliance. Is this a common practice?
No, well, this is not. Maybe they have not received, or you can contact them and meet them once and let them know that you have already filed, because normally such cases doesn't arrive.
Okay, understood.
It
Thank
has to be. I think you should you just check. Have you submitted it online or physically? You have made the delivery of that annual report. Kindly check that.
Understood. Since there are a few more situational questions, I think I'll just take a last couple of questions because this is very insightful and informative for everybody. So I would want everybody to get their full chance on getting their responses. So this question is from Poonam. If there is zero complaint, we still need to submit the annual report to the district officer or not?
Yes, you have to. So annual report is mandatory, even if there is no complaint, but still you have to submit.
Okay. And this one question from Meghana Aradhya. If the female employee has left the company, but still if the male employee is requesting for sexual things, what to be done in that case? Do we still file
Well, that is not covered under Posh.
Yes, because then you have already left the company, so you're no longer part of the company.
Yes.
Understood.
So as I said, there are several other methods also to handle such cases. So you can go for those methods.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much for this, wonderful discussion today, Ruchika. A very sensitive topic indeed, but you have shared great insights, told us ways to, go about it. What is the need? Why is it required? What all comes under sexual harassment? And at the end of the day, it's not just the responsibility of the employer or the organization or the HR teams or the ICC for that matter, but it's the responsibility of each and every member employee of the company to be a decent person at the end of the day, be respectful towards everybody. And if they fail to do that, there are of course laws that can be implemented in that case, and you can be punished for it, you can be fined for it. So thank you so much once again for sharing all that you did today. It was great to have you here with us today, and special thanks to our audience also. Very engaging session. We had over 100 questions, I think. We covered most of them during the live session. We have also answered some of them on the chat itself. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us. But if you still have any more questions and you still want to know more about Posh, you can join our greytHR community. It's a free knowledge sharing platform where you can sign up and have access to experts like Ruchika. You can put your queries there and they would be able to guide you with the responses. And not just that, as promised in the beginning, the recording of this session will be shared with all of you with the credential of Ruchika. So if you want to, connect with her separately after this session, you would be able to do that and have those discussions later. Thank you so much once again, everybody, for joining us. And thanks to you, Ruchika, for such an insightful session today. We look forward to hosting you very soon again.
Thank you, Raki. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to our audience, before you log out, we have another Parichay webinar session on 22nd of May, where we will be talking about how you can win the talent war, smart hiring strategies for a competitive edge. In this session, we'll be having 2 HR leaders with us, and we'll have a very, insightful panel discussion. And we would love for all of you to also join us for that session. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put the registration link in the chat right now for all of you to access. And if you want to register for that webinar also, please feel free to do that. I have just put in the registration link right now. You can register for this webinar. This will happen at 4 p.m. on 22nd May. So feel free to join in and feel free to share it with anybody else who you think would benefit from attending this session. We'll keep it here for another 2 minutes and then we'll end the session. Once again, thank you so much for your time today. And we look forward to hosting you very soon. Thank you so much.